Okay, today we are diving deep into one of the most disturbing and complex scandals of our time, the story of Jeffrey Epstein. We're going to break down how this massive criminal network operated right out in the open, how it was protected for so long, and what secrets the infamous Epstein Files have, and maybe more importantly, haven't revealed. So let's get into it.
At the very heart of this story is a private island, a 75-acre piece of land called Little St. James. Now, to the outside world, to his very famous guests, it was an absolute paradise. Think luxury bungalows, stunning beaches, a real slice of heaven. But underneath all that beauty was a living hell. The locals had a different name for it, Pedophile Island. It was a place where young girls, some as young as 12, were trafficked and trapped. Their passports were taken, and with the ocean all around, there was literally no escape.
So who was the man behind all this? Well, Jeffrey Epstein's backstory is pretty wild. He actually started out as a high school math teacher, but somehow he managed to climb his way up the social and financial ladder, becoming a trusted advisor to billionaires and building his own fortune of around $600 million. And with that kind of money, you get access. He was rubbing elbows with some of the most powerful people in the world, guys like Bill Clinton and Donald Trump.
But, a world built on secrets like that, it can't last. Sooner or later, the cracks start to show. And that brings us to our first section, which is really about a total perversion of justice, how this whole criminal enterprise was uncovered only to be protected by the very people who were supposed to stop it.
The whole thing started to unravel in March of 2005. And it wasn't some huge federal investigation or a big sting operation. It was just one complaint, filed by the parents of a 14-year-old girl who told the police she'd been abused at a rich man's mansion.
And what the police uncovered was this chillingly efficient system. It was basically a pyramid scheme of abuse. A young girl would be lured in with an offer of $200 or $300 for a massage. After she was abused, she'd then get a bonus for recruiting her friends. And just like that, you have this horrific, self-perpetuating cycle of trafficking that preyed almost entirely on underage girls.
The scale of this was just staggering. In those first few months alone, the local police in Palm Beach identified more than 36 victims who were minors. And they absolutely knew that was just the tip of the iceberg. What's so gut-wrenching about this is how predatory it all was. This quote from one of the victims, it just says it all. She explained that to try and get the job, she told them about her troubled past. And she said, "That's the worst thing that I could have done, because I just let them know that I'm vulnerable and I'm their perfect type."
So you think, with dozens of victims, an FBI investigation, this would be an open and shut case, right? Well, wrong. Behind closed doors, a federal attorney named Alexander Acosta cut a secret plea deal with Epstein's high-powered lawyers. And this deal was unbelievable. It gave Epstein and anyone who might have been involved with him total immunity from all federal charges. And the worst part, the victims were never even told this was happening.
So for all of this, for crimes involving dozens of young girls, what was the big punishment? 18 months. And get this, he only served 13 of those. And during that time, he was allowed to leave the jail for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, on work release. It was barely a sentence at all.
For years, that was pretty much it. The case went cold, the bad guy got away with it. But the story was far from over. Because a decade later, one journalist's relentless digging would bring this whole nightmare roaring back into the headlines. After he got out in 2009, Epstein just went right back to his lavish life. Private jets, powerful friends, all of it. But then, in 2018, an investigative journalist for the Miami Herald, Julie K. Brown, published a bombshell series called Perversion of Justice. It laid bare the whole secret deal, the cover-up, everything. The public was outraged, and the pressure was so intense that prosecutors in New York had no choice. In July 2019, Epstein was arrested again.
This time, it looked like justice was finally on the horizon. He was facing up to 45 years. But then, the story took its most bizarre and controversial turn yet, Epstein's death in jail, which just lit a match to a political firestorm.
On August 10, 2019, just a little over a month after he was arrested, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead. The official cause of death was ruled a suicide, but the fact that he died before he could ever name names in a trial? Well, that immediately sparked a whirlwind of suspicion and conspiracy theories.
And this is where it became a full-blown political weapon. You probably remember the phrase Epstein didn't kill himself. It became a huge viral slogan. The president at the time, Donald Trump, was retweeting theories that pointed the finger at Bill Clinton. He even promised voters that if he were elected, he'd release all the Epstein files. But then, after the election, he did a complete 180, calling the whole thing a boring, quote, Democrat hoax. Quite a change of tune.
That kind of reversal just poured gasoline on the fire. People were more suspicious than ever, and the public demand to see what was in those files became deafening. Eventually, the government was pretty much forced to do something.
And they did. In a really rare moment of unity, Democrats and Republicans in Washington actually came together and passed a bill demanding the Justice Department release the files. The public pressure had just become too great to ignore.
So what was actually in the files they released? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. A lot of the conversation had been about Bill Clinton, but the documents that came out had a surprising number of allegations related to Donald Trump. They alleged he flew on Epstein's private plane multiple times, that he knew about the abuse and did nothing, and that he was even named in a 1995 rape allegation reported to the FBI. There was also mention of a letter, supposedly from Epstein, that talked about a shared love for young girls with Trump. But, and this is a really important but, this is nowhere near the full story. As shocking as all that is, we now know there are over 1 million more documents related to the case that are still sealed, completely hidden from the public. What we've seen is just a tiny fraction.
And that, right there, leaves us with the biggest question of all. With so much still hidden, so many pages still blacked out, what other secrets and what other powerful names are still buried in the Epstein files? It seems like the whole truth is still waiting to be told.